Hey, you're listening to Fat and Greasy Citizens, a podcast about Shakespeare. I'm Fat.
And I'm Greasy. Every week we do a deep dive into every act of every Shakespeare play ever written, mostly while drinking.
More specifically, I'm Chuck. I'm a former English major and now a digital editor who cares a lot about Shakespeare.
And I'm Gabe. Let's do it!
Hello, subjects. This is Queen Elizabeth numero uno. Don't get it twisted, y'all. And I'm thrilled to take over the introductions for fat and greasy citizens from old Billy Shakes, perhaps the greatest writer in the English language. But what a bore! I've fallen asleep just thinking about his face. Anyway, in this episode, Taming of the Shrew Act V, in which Shrew finally gets tamed. Horrifying? Yes! Enjoy!
We've been going back and forth about whether or not this is producible or if it holds up or whatever. And I gotta tell you, I loved this act. I feel like everything that we were talking about going into it, about how it's the things about it that are problematic, possibly to the point of being irredeemably problematic. The thought that occurred to my head is when I think I was like 19 or 20 when the David Fincher movie Seven came out. And it's a horrifying movie, but I walked out of it and I was just like, yes, that is what I want. And that's what I felt out of this. It was just like, this is steadily escalating horror. But it gave me the Rosemary's Baby that I wanted at the end. It was just like, okay, well, I don't know if he meant to do it, but it's all on the page. If you want to do this as a horrific vision of male toxicity, then it's all on the page. And I felt a great joy of just like, oh, okay, yeah. Like I don't know if Shakespeare's has the right thoughts about this, but you can do it with what's on the page.
That is, those are really great. Yeah, if you treat it like just the darkest comedy you could possibly think of in terms of a man-woman relationship, yeah, it would totally work. Seven. I like the idea that the first place he went was Seven. John Doe's got the upper hand.
Yeah, that's exactly where I think it ends. It's just like, and because I was trying to think through why was I so exhilarated finishing this, and why am I exhilarated to be like, oh God, his beloved wife is just a head in a box and he wins. Why is it exhilarating? Because you just step back and look at what the author did, and you're just like, shit, man, you did it. That's terrible. That's terrible in a way that I couldn't. It
really is. And it's funny is that there are there are lines that give me pause all the time. And my favorite, it's jumping ahead a little bit, but I think that it could be the driving force for what we're going to talk about. But the widow says, "He that is giddy thinks the world turns round." And for a second, I thought, holy shit. Like Shakespeare is throwing in this little kernel of psychological genius where it's like, yeah, of course I seem like a shrew to you because you're like the epicenter. Like from your standpoint, all women are like this and all women need it.
I hadn't even thought of that. I love the widow overall. But yeah,
well, she turns on Kate immediately.
That she diagnoses him so effectively, just like.
Yeah, and then for a second I was like, "Holy shit!" Like this is the point where Shakespeare must have gone back in a time machine or something like that. But then the widow immediately throws Kate under the bus. it immediately is turned on Kate the whole rest of that scene. So yeah, for a second I thought, "Oh wow, this is so far ahead of its time. It would be impossible to comprehend from a Elizabethan crowd." But it didn't.
Well, I was back and forth on that because, yes, broadly on an Elizabethan crowd, but at the same time, I don't know if the Elizabethan crowd was men and women or not. But either way, those men who are married know that some of them probably know that they have the misogynist person they are in the streets and the person they are at home where they're actually negotiating a relationship with someone. And so I think it's not impossible that there are men in the audience who can understand it on two levels. That like your single friend guys are like, yeah, fucking women, right? You're just like, yeah, this is horrible. What
Yeah.
a society we live in. Like, I
it's funny because it's probably a lot like, you know, if you're gonna create an analogy between then and now, like the comedians who do that kind of like polarizing man woman joke sets, you know, the difference between men and women, you know, and like, you know, it's basically the same thing, but in a much more extreme, you know, like a much more extreme fashion, you know.
well, there's a scene where again, we're jumping ahead, but there's a scene where the women are fighting, and it reminded me of a scene from the second Anchorman movie. And it occurred to me that like, 100 years from now, you could assume that Anchorman was like straight. You could be like, oh, this is what they thought was actually acceptable and what people were. And so, but you could do the whole thing in like an Anchorman absurdist way, where it's just like stupid guys talking to stupid guys, and they think their stakes are high, but they don't understand that they actually, you know, run a local news team, or in this case, like, are just idiots in Italy with gobs of money who actually have no attachment to anything that's real at all. But let's jump into the first scene a little bit. First of all, apropos nothing, I just want to say that "Come Hither, Crackhemp" is it immediately establishes Vincentio as not just like the dad, but like the Uber dad, where he's just like, he goes to his son's servant. It's just like, Crackhemp, get over here.
Yeah.
And as soon as they see him, they're just like, oh shit, it's Vincentio. Utterly fine.
That phrase Crackhemp, it mystified me so much I had to look it up, and it's also known as crack rope. And it's basically somebody who deserves to be hanged. You're literally cracking the rope with your neck.
It's so good. It's just like,
it's a great
you are a piece
term.
of meat to go in a noose. Get over here. It's just like,
I loved it.
Shit. He has the power to hang me too. Like, he's a rich guy in medieval Italy, so he can do whatever he wants to be.
Yeah, and the balls. Is it Biondello who says, I know Vincentio. He's right up there in the window. Balls and the guy.
Like, they're all like in for a penny, in for a pound, and just like, no, man, you're crazy.
It's almost like it's almost like the corrupt illusion around, you know, perhaps a national leader who has convinced everybody that he's doing a great job. And all of a sudden, like, the reality seeps in, is like, well, what are you talking about? No, he's the president. You're like, what?
But also at that exact moment where you assume that everyone's not going to go along with the fantasy, and you see that some people are just like, no, like, this is, I've already gone this far, so I'm going to commit to it and tell my boss's dad that he has to go to jail, and tell some local constables to beat the crap out of him.
That's when you know you're in too deep. But, you know, the funny thing is that Vincentio doesn't really help himself. Like, the first thing I wrote for this scene was, why doesn't he just immediately say he's Vincentio? Like, it's such a silly bullshit thing to do, where like the guy playing him comes out of the window and says, Lucentio isn't here, but he can't be disturbed. And Vincentio says, well, what if someone were to give him a couple $100? And, you know, just fucking say you're Vincentio, for Christ's sake.
That's what I liked, in that I feel like he's a rich old man. He's a grown-up version of these toxic men, and so he's used to throwing his weight around. And so he runs into an obstacle. He laughingly says, what if I throw some money at it? And at no point does he lose his unearned confidence. Like, even as the police are coming or anything else, he's just like, you're going to hang, fuck you. And just like, it's one of the reasons that I love this whole act, is because I feel like the vectors of both toxicity, like moving across various men, start to multiply. The number of women who are caught in this god-awful web start to multiply. But they all start to lead into like these more and more toxic versions of themselves that kind of like make it not just about Petruchio, but about this entire fucked up system that they're all a part of. Which I love the fact that like Petruchio has essentially broken Kate at this point, and one of the first things that once they see that that Vincentio is getting in trouble, he basically says, Kate, let's step aside and watch this old man beat this servant up, because Petruchio is like beating Biondello or something. And he's like, oh, this is a good show. Let's just watch this happen. Like, we came here with this guy. We've been talking with him. Let's just watch this crazy man beat another person up.
We can assume Petruchio is a sadist at this point.
Yes.
I mean, he gets off on this kind of thing. You're like oh, a beating? A public beating? Kate, you'll like this.
Yeah.
because
from his point of view, that's what everyone likes, is a public beating.
Yeah.
Like, but I also like that. So I can't see any way that I think Petruchio bears no responsibility for what's being done to Vincentio. It's just things that his son has done to him. This is Lucentio's carelessness coming home to roost. And so while to date, like, Petruchio has steadily corrupted men all around him, this is also a sign of, like, there's also just like a deep well of douchebaggery that runs through rich Italy. And so we like Lucentio better than other people, but when his dad gets beat up and his dad's about to be thrown in a dungeon, it becomes all the more clear that, like, oh, you set these things in motion because for no reason you said that you killed a guy, for no reason you had a pedant impersonate your dad, and for no reason you, like, empowered Biondello, who's obviously an idiot, to, like, orchestrate all these things. And so this was all foreseeable, but you were just a rich young guy who wanted what he wanted, so you set these things in motion. And so it starts to make it less about Petruchio being a force of evil and more a guy who, like, surfs over a system that's based on evil.
Yeah. And you can easily, just based on what you said, you can easily adapt this story to be, this could be a commentary on class structure in general, because as much as, Lucentio did a lot to bring this all about, he suffers no consequences for it.
And that's one of the overarching themes that I love, and I think it's throughout this act, is that the men do things wrong, but they suffer no consequences. But both in what happens to them and what people say, the constant theme is, like, boys will be boys, but there's nothing worse than when a woman speaks up. Well, let's all agree. Boys will be boys, and there's literally nothing worse than when a woman speaks up. You can throw your dad in jail. You can beat a minister. This is so much better than when a woman speaks up.
But the mouth on this woman. Yeah, you really could. Now that you say that, it's like you could really see. Like, I could see you have Vincentio as like a Roger Stone type, who is like, it's baffling to him that he's being accused of anything at the end there. That kind of like I just refuse to be accused.
Right.
Of whatever it is that you're like, you could, like, this whole thing could be this class warfare thing.
He's pretty sure that he'll be pardoned in the end, no matter what. Another thing that I really liked about this act is we've been talking for a while about how Gremio, the old guy, has no reason for being. And in this act, he seems like he also got out of a time-traveling device, because he keeps trying to bring rationality to the situation, but everyone's off to the races in their insanity. He tries to stop Baptista from arresting Vincentio, but all of Lucentio's servants just jump on him and be like, oh, well, then I guess I'm not Lucentio either. And he's like, well, I can't vouch for that. He's like, they're like, do you swear? He's like, I don't swear. I'm just saying don't arrest this guy. And they're just like, shut the fuck up. And he's just, and throughout this, he's like a moderating force, but no one ever cares. And so it seems like he's like a rational person trying to, like, but not as it has been throughout where it's Kate, but he's like just a rational guy looking at these guys doing these awful things, and like no one cares. It's like any other time in a bad masculine environment where, like, if you speak up and say, like, maybe we shouldn't, everyone's just like, just shut the fuck up. We're gonna drive the truck over the bridge, and it's gonna be awesome. Okay, like, we're gonna hit the ramp, and it's just shut up, man. Just be cool. We got this.
Because this pristine coup has gone flawlessly. So, like, it's like, again, the plot is so incredibly and that's again, like, one of the things that I said last time was that convoluted the ending of Act 4 where Vincentio shows up. You're like, oh, come on, like this, like yet another mistaken identity layer folded onto everything else. And what's interesting about Act 5 is that mistaken identity thing is with Vincentio doesn't last long. It's only like a page and a half.
It doesn't last
Where-
long. But the only result of it is just to humiliate the father. There's no
Right.
it just ends poorly. It's not one of those things where it like works out or there's a twist or something. It's just humiliating to the father in a way that, if you apply it to anywhere else, should result in terrible consequences. But they all just kind of bro it out.
Bro It Out was the alternate title for this, I'm told. Shakespeare is Bro It Out.
Bros before hoes. Shakespeare play. So the fact that like the only thing they've been able to put down Gremio on is that he's old to date also makes it feel just like everyone else has flaws that they're made fun of about, but Gremio, like, they just say he's old. And so it seems all the more just like, yeah, this is just a rational guy who just like is at the mercy of these nasty bullying douchebags. And it's just, he's just within a toxic culture trying to state rational things, but everyone around him is insane. Like, it's interesting, Gremio, like, why have Gremio and Hortensio? Hortensio ends up with the widow. Gremio is just standing around just being like, he's just muttering like lowly, I wouldn't do that. I think you guys are assholes. I don't think that was necessary, Petruchio. But he knows he's not going to change anything, but he's just like, he actually says at one point, he's like, listen, I'm coming for a meal. That's why I'm coming to this thing. But like, y'all are dicks. Y'all are just, you're awful. But fine, whatever. You all go get married. I pity your wives. But he just seems like a grounded character. It's almost like he picked up the role from Kate to be like the audience's understanding of the scene as it goes on.
That's what I was going to say is, like, you know, normally a play will have some character as the stand-in for the audience's commentary, and we don't really have that. We have Kate for a second, but she's quickly squashed. And like, it's a weird convention to have somebody speak rationally now. Like it's Act 5, and that's the comedy, you know, of it, is that, oh, finally somebody has sense in their head, but it's so late in the game. You know, it's the final act.
I can't remember which act it was we were talking about, but at some point, because this play is so happy, I brought up Orwell's 1984, and it reminds me of that, because in that there's two people who would be good for each other, but there's just no way in this society they're going to find each other, and you could almost see like Kate and Gremio in a better world being like, oh, you think this is bullshit? I think this is bullshit. Maybe we should go on a date and see if we like each other. But in this world, like, there's just no chance of that. And so, like, I don't think either of them will ever be aware of it. But just to see that baton kind of get passed from a woman in the first half of the play to a man in the back half of a play, I just love the symmetry of it overall. And speaking of symmetry, so once Baptista figures out that he's been duped, Bianca just goes to him and he says, it's basically magic. Cambio has changed into Lucentio.
Yeah.
And like, he's like, okay. But that is literally like, it's like a parallel to the sun versus moon thing in the last act, which was just like violence to Kate's brain to just like drive her insane. But when it's getting Lucentio out of jail or out of trouble, it's essentially like, oh, well, it's just a rich guy and he did this thing. And the response is like, well, okay, I guess boys will be boys. Like, the fact that like this thing is turned into that thing is this horrific thing a couple lines ago. And here it's like, this thing is now turned to that thing. And it's just not a big deal. Just seems to like drive into like, what matters is who it's done to. If it's done,
yes,
if it's a man doing it to a woman, it can be a horrific thing. If it's getting a guy out of jail, then it's like, well, I guess this thing turned into that thing, and that's just fine. Yeah. Like, let's not worry about it. Bygone.
And that, I think that's been a theme since the beginning, even with Sly, is that the person who speaks first or sets the tone first is the person who creates the reality, you know. And in the beginning, Sly, like, the whole Sly doesn't come back, which I fucking knew it. I knew it that we weren't going to return to Sly ever again. But that idea of somebody, you know, basically waking up and saying, hey, you're a king. you've always been a king. It's almost like motivational speaking gone berserk, right? It's like this idea that if I say it first, you're going to believe it. Not only are you going to believe it, everybody's in on it. And if enough people believe it, it'll come true, and they even do it with Vincencio there at the end, basically saying, like he walks in and, where's my son? Like, well, I know Vincencio, he's right there in the window. Like that idea of like, we as a group are creating this reality, and we can easily undermine the actual reality by just a consensus, by just saying.
I think, to your point, like it's always a consensus around class and around bros. Like you can bros. It's like a caste system. Young rich bros at the top, elder rich bros below that, bros overall, and then just women at the bottom, just
at
being
the
utterly reactive to whatever anyone wants.
But speaking of rich bros, by the way, did you notice how fast the police response in Padua is? The one character says, "Call forth an officer," and the next line is, "Enter an officer."
Well,
like
nice
for comedy.
Yeah, no. I'm pretty sure
for comedy's sake. I think for comedy's sake, that is hilarious. The idea of saying somebody get a cop, and a cop just immediately pops into
that is a way where you can make it clear that just like this is about a rich toxic bro culture, where it's just like, hello. Jesus.
Like that's honestly through the whole play, that single stage direction is what made me laugh the most. Like it caught me so much by surprise. Call forth an officer, enter officer. It's not even it's enter an officer, which is even funnier. Like a random, it's like completely anonymous police officer just shows up out of nowhere. Manifest.
Yeah, because they're always on call in the rich suburb that is Padua.
Sure. Yeah, he's probably got a sweet polo on that says Neighborhood Watch on it. Billy Club and taser. Yeah, that's right.
Just come in on a Segway like he's in the suburbs, not a.
Or that guy. Do you remember in the movie Grosse Pointe Blank, the guy who plays the security? He's like the security detail for a certain real estate, for Jeremy Piven's real estate guy.
Yeah.
That kind of like, the security guard with a
super
little
eager.
Much too super eager, a little too much bravado, takes it way too seriously. That's what I was envisioning.
Yeah, no, like just
an officer.
Thrilled to show up to Baptista's house and kiss his ass. Like, what do you need? What do you need? Like, this is.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what happens downtown. If I can make you happy for the next 15 minutes, then you want me to beat this old guy up? Great. Okay.
Yeah. Speaking of downtown, this guy's going downtown. And it's like Vincencio's like, what the fuck?
I have no idea what the movie Kiss Me Kate is about, but I know the name, and so I keep coming back to it throughout. And one of the things that always jumps out at me, I don't know if, I feel like in my mind, when someone kisses, there's usually stage direction that says they kiss. That's not on the page. And so I have this thing in my head that Petruchio doesn't actually care if she kisses him. She cares if she will acquiesce to kiss him. And that he actually has desire for money, for power, and for food. But he doesn't have much in the way of actual sexual appetites. Like he wants to humiliate her and have power over her. But
that's interesting.
Her giving in to kiss him is all that he really demands.
Yeah.
And so, like, for instance, like this, I think this first one is particularly sad because he's like, kiss me. And she's like, no, I won't. And he's like, is it because I'm repulsive? And she says, no, I just don't want to kiss you on the street because that's not something that nice women do. And so it feels like, it feels very unlike Kate to be grabbing on to like a vestige of like, this is how proper women would behave. But also it is one last piece of her respectability that she's holding on to. And he's like, oh, well then fuck it. We're not going to see what's happening. And then she's like, fine, I will kiss you in public. And I almost feel like for Petruchio, like what he most wants is to strip her of that power. He doesn't actually care if he kisses her or not. There's still some power, even in the most sexist societies, in femininity. If the sexes are separate, then they're supposed to have some right to being respected and some right to like privacy and whatnot. And he's just like, well, if I can make you out to be a harlot on the street, then I'll have more power over you. So no, kiss me in the street or else it's not happening. And so she gives in. And so it just seems like it's not something that she ever would have thought to have taken pride in, but it was one last thing that she had. And he's like, well, give it up or else we're not going. And she's just like, okay, fine. And I suppose they could kiss or they couldn't kiss, but the fact that they don't just drives home for me that like, it doesn't matter if they kiss or not. What matters is that he got her to agree to do this. And that's all he really wanted.
And I actually wrote down, it's the last stripping of her free will in that moment. It's the last, because as you say, like, you know, a person's sexual privacy is probably the most intimate thing that a person has, you know, on their person is their sexual intimacy. Like that it's normally something that you don't publicize. And the idea, like, I could see it played either way. They actually kiss or maybe they don't. But I was stuck on the visual of it for a long time. Like as I was reading it, I all I could think of is if they actually did kiss in that moment, it becomes a really unsettling image.
Oh God, yeah, no, it'd be horrible.
You know,
like no,
it would
no.
be
Well,
so.
if you don't give it, no matter what the sexual thing is, if you don't give me this thing, whatever the sexual thing is, then I won't give you what I want. And when acquiesces, just God, just.
Yeah, I mean, I think in a tasteful production, maybe they don't kiss at all, and we get the, you know, as you say, the sense that all he wanted was her defeat. But if you really want to creep out an audience, have them kiss, because
if you want to show the head in the box, then
yeah, that's your 7 moment. Because honestly, there's no way to do that and have it funny or good for Kate at all.
And as far as we know, they haven't. I think when they got married, he kissed her in a way that like disgusted the entire audience. And so we know that happened, but that was like at a wedding ceremony. So that's not violating the vows of like good taste, but this is him just being like, what? We're on the street. Fucking do it. It's and we were wondering, why would you have that off screen? So having this be the first one on stage would be like, I didn't want to see that. I didn't want to see that. Why did you have to?
A coerced, you know, just like the intentions behind it are completely malicious. It's just not. It's so uncomfortable. And honestly, I assumed they kiss. I know that. I mean, you say it's on the page. It's not on the page. And that what's funny is I didn't even notice that because I was so repulsed. You know, I assumed it was going to happen. You know, I assumed that happened, and like the final nail for Kate is put in the coffin.
Because if he's completely destroyed her mental independence, and then he's proven that he can publicly pull sexual action from her, then like there's nothing left. You have no cards to play, Kate. You're out.
Right.
Like, so that's awful. So segue from that to, do you have anything else in the first scene?
No.
So segue from that to this, and this is why I feel like it starts to become broader, in part because it goes right to Lucentio, and he's like, I know how I'm going to get out of this. I'm going to invite everyone to a banquet that my dad paid for. And it works. It's just like, oh, I was angry, but look at this spread.
Yeah.
This is so good. Oh,
okay, Junior. It's a very like Junior move. Like
obviously, like Kate or any other woman does not have this at their disposal. It's just like, all right, listen, this is delicious, so let's let bygones be bygones. What
well, remember, Kate has been starved for the good part of a day or two.
Yes,
so.
Yes, exactly. So he gets to solve. Yeah, the control over food reinforces all the worst parts of masculinity throughout. Like, because they use food to demonstrate the power of the purse. Like, they have the power to spend money wherever they want, so they can control whatever someone eats. And so you can actually, this comes up later, but like, women always get the stick and men always get the carrot. And so if you're trying to get it back in good with your dad or your soon to be father-in-law, or I guess your now father-in-law, then you provide them with food. But to get at Kate, you just deny her food for nights and nights.
Take away the food.
It's like consistently the same thing happens, but it's a punishment for the woman, and it's just a chance for the bros to bro out.
No matter what that food is, be it overdone steak with ketchup on it. I'm just taking shots at the president now. The way he preserves his steak is like super well with a bunch of ketchup dumped on top,
but
like a toddler.
Can't you see the president being angry at his wife and being like, just let her eat mustard. Just let her eat mustard.
Yeah.
She'll learn. She'll learn.
She'll learn.
Mustard. All she gets
exactly.
is spicy mustard. then she'll shape up. Okay? They get nothing. No money for COVID, okay?
And that's what's funny is that I think it's Petruchio who says when it's basically revealed that he's broken Kate, he says he has this long laundry list of, this is the way to live a great life, to live a perfect life. And he uses the term white supremacy, which I, of course, misread as white supremacy. I immediately thought, I was like, what the fuck? And then because
you could do a great coughing line over that. White supremacy.
White supremacy. Yeah, it was just like, the
line is creepy enough on its own, but just like,
yeah, like guys,
this is the life. White supremacy.
I've never seen
this is. Oh, and
I've never seen the word right in front of supremacy, so my brain immediately said, well, it's white supremacy. You know how Shakespeare writes about white supremacy all the time? It's like, is this Othello all of a sudden? What is we transitioned to a different play?
Oh, our women are listening to us. We've got white supremacy. Because what he basically says is like, and that line is like, yeah, if your women listen to you, it's basically white supremacy. It's like, you are evil, but you get it, man.
This guy gets it. Lucentio gets it.
No, he doesn't. All right, take it back. But so one of the reasons that like I thought that got my wheels spinning about maybe he doesn't care about sex at all is Petruchio, when Lucentio is trying to get everyone to sit down to the banquet, he says like, so let's all sit down and eat this great food and we'll talk things out. And Petruchio just says like, no, we're going to sit. We're nothing to do but sit and eat and eat. That's what I'm here for. I'm here for a fucking meal. If you want to talk to your dad or your father-in-law, that's fine. But like, I am eating. Bring out the food. That's all I care about. I wouldn't be here if there wasn't food. I don't care that you're my brother-in-law now. I'm here for a meal. Shut up.
And that idea is kind of corroborated by everybody else. Like I can't remember who the other character is, but they're like, yeah, it's pretty great here. like nothing. Everything's a delight here in Padua. Everybody's kind of like, yeah, this is awesome.
They're just full of roast beef, and they're like, what are we fighting about? And so then like Petruchio just turns the dinner into this, like, there's no need, when you like, when you're with a group of people and you don't know them all, and for some reason someone steers it into politics or steers it into a toxic direction or steers it somewhere, that's what Petruchio does for every woman at the table. They're just like sitting there eating. And he's just like, he's jabbering back and forth with Hortensio, and Hortensio gives it back just a little bit. He's like, it's a good one. Kiss him, widow. And it's just like, did you just tell my new wife to kiss me? It's like, what is the matter with you? What is the matter with you, man?
Even a little suggestion that and that's why I was so excited by the widow's line about he that is giddy thinks the world turns around. I thought for like that, I thought initially, and maybe it's played both ways. Maybe it is initially an insult to him, but it so quickly becomes about Kate that I wonder if
the tragedy of it is, I think she nails him, but then Kate takes offense on his behalf, and it's just like, Kate, you're gone. You're a pod person now. But it's nice because the widow comes in like Kate Act 1. Like she's slapping down stupidities left and right. She doesn't give in to like the bait that Petruchio is laying out there. I think both she and Hortensio are kind of in a decent place overall side. But then like the widow kind of like being attacked on all sides by chauvinists lashes out with a bit of chauvinism of her own against Kate by calling her a shrew, which kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
Like if women can't be friends, then you have to call another woman a shrew or whatever else. But like if there's a space for all the bros to bro out, but all the women are isolated, then the only way to like defend yourself is to distract the mob and be like, well, we all agree that she's the shrewiest one of the bunch, right? So
yeah, and Bianca has already learned that lesson, right? If I jump on Kate, if I jump on Kate, nobody like I get away. In fact, when she's engaged by Petruchio, she immediately disengages. Like she's got the luxury now of saying like, I'm not going to go into this.
No, she's trash. She's absolute trash. The boys are basically yelling cat fight, and Bianca sucks at being filthy. Like this is our second time to see will there ever be a good Horton joke? Not in this play.
Yeah, because that one she even I love the preface of saying like she basically says like a funny person might say like almost saying like somebody who's funnier than I might say that blah 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 blah.
Well,
and it's like
the guy says butt, and she's like a funny person might say a head and a butt is weird. It's just like we're eating. Why did you bring up analingus? Like what in the hell?
Yeah.
And then creepily enough, Vincentio, an old man, is just like, oh, that woke you up, huh? And she's like, I'm going back to sleep. And back to sleep is such like a telling phrase where just like, I feel like sometimes she's bovine, sometimes she's just like a zombie, but she's just like, oh, I said something sexy, now I'm going back to sleep. And it's just like, Bianca, you're just the worst.
Yeah.
and
asleep on her sister's horrifying transformation. Like she is checked out. Her story is a fairy tale story. Like she got what she wanted. And Kate, Kate has that final monologue, which is the most depressing
it's fucking hell
thing ever written in the English language.
And
like it's
but it's I think that actually reminds me of What's in the Box. Like that's what that monologue is, where it's just like,
yeah,
oh baby, no,
yeah,
gotta stop.
It actually reminds me of a good friend of mine told me a story. It's his story, but I'm paraphrasing. He used to work in an office with a woman who, at the desk, it was kind of known that she had rocky relationships, and as during lunch one day, they asked her. They were in some kind of conversation. She wasn't involved in the conversation yet, but they were talking, and just incredulous by some kind of domestic abuse they had just read about in the paper, and they said, "I'm going to call her Samantha." I have no idea what her name was, but they're like, "Samantha, let me ask you a question. How many times does a guy have to hit you before you leave him?" And she seriously thought about it and said, "I don't know, 2." And the whole group simultaneously went, no, honey, the answer is 0. The answer is none, no times.
The first time you think this guy could do it, oh no.
Like she really, like she had that moment of being like, well, if you hit me twice, that's horrifying that anybody would think that,
Once.
oh yeah, I could take that abuse.
How was his day? So
yeah, exactly. Let me put this in context. Did I interrupt him during the big game?
Was it Sunday? That's a mulligan.
Or
the Yankees playing? That's a mulligan. Was it Thanksgiving weekend? Also a mulligan. It's basically 60 days of mulligans.
That's where Kate is at the end. It's like these are the things. Like, and her argument is so steeped in stereotypes, and like the men go out and work, and the very least we could do is be loyal to them. It's so horrifying.
But it's brilliant. in its inversion. Like, well, let me. I want to get through a couple more things before we get there, but like, because I just feel like this act is so packed full of this. First of all, like, I want to know quickly that like Vincentio ends the last scene furious at his son. The fact that he pivots to being a perv with his new daughter-in-law, it just shows that like the solution to all the problems here are about male chauvinism. Like the fact that he's supposedly angry at his son for lying about him, but then he's just like, oh, that woke you up, huh, honey? It's just like, just Vincentio, like we thought you had an ego, but we didn't think you were gross. But like by Petruchio introducing just like awfulness into the conversation, like that points Vincentio in the same direction as everywhere else.
And I wonder if there's a way to do that directorially. Like if you're doing this, I think it's fascinating that for a second, if you're in this like bro atmosphere, for a second when Vincentio shows up and he's like not a part of it yet, I wonder if there's a way to make it clear that he's just as big of a dirtbag as everyone else. Like as soon as it's revealed that he's the real Vincentio and all that, he just falls right into it, you know?
Right.
Like,
and you're expecting both the dads to be great Shakespearean dads, and they're not. They're just older versions of these same trash bags. Like Tranio makes fun of Petruchio saying that basically that he married a bitch. And Baptista's like, oh, he got you. You totally married my daughter who sucks.
Yeah.
Like, what? Why are you making fun of your son-in-law for marrying your daughter?
Yeah.
Don't ever do that. You're just...
And I feel like that kind of convention of a terrible parent we still see today, and it's done to great effect. But I feel like it just kind of it's strangely doesn't work here. Like I just feel like if everybody's an asshole, then again it goes back to the Family Guy reference. It's like if everybody's a dirtbag, like am I supposed to feel good after this comedy? Like I don't.
Well, and that's why I appreciated like there being a use for Gremio and the fact that like he at this dinner is like he's like, hey, that was a jerk thing to say. Like it's just little things here and there. But you could see him just like sitting at the table being like, what the fuck am I doing here?
And there's a cut scene where Gremio is shot execution style at the end.
For not throwing it out.
Yeah, no, he didn't get into the man's club well enough, so he was shot, killed.
So, Petruchio, in making fun of all of the other guys' dealings with their women, always compares them to animals. He's making fun of Tranio for not being like a sly dog and getting in with Bianca. He makes fun of he talks about Bianca as being like a deer that you could bring home, but like it's always references of just like, or when the bet starts, they're like, let's bet 20 ducats or whatever, and he's like, listen, that's what I bet on my dog or my horse. This is my wife, so at least double that.
At least he's considering it. And like, honestly, Petruchio is such a dirtbag. So at least he's slightly valuing his wife's free will above the animals in his life. Like maybe that's like a peek into some humanity left in that guy.
So yes, he values her more, but one of the creepiest moments in like super creepy time is Baptista says to Petruchio, you have completely erased my daughter. Therefore, I'm going to double your dowry.
Yeah.
It's like the connection between bro culture and like bro control of capitalism is just made right there. Just like he doesn't say you've improved her. He doesn't say you've given her better manners. He says you've erased her. Yeah, and I want to give you twice as much money as I would have because now she's that non-mild girl is gone. And it's just like, what? This is the worst thing I've ever heard.
And if I were playing that part, and these days I'm cast more as the fathers anyway, but that I would definitely play that super serious in the beginning, like you've erased my daughter, and then double down. Then I would totally
Son, come here.
I would get really serious and almost almost menacing, and then I would totally switch it up with "You're the best."
But you could also play into the comedy of it once you do that, of just like the same way you can with like Michael Scott or something, where you're just like, it is a weight off my shoulder to have her gone forever. Like,
yeah.
Whew, that was tough trying to pretend like I was a father. It was exhausting. Okay, so then the actual soliloquy of horror. One thing that jumped out at me is that when she's talking about the things that brave men do, she's reading off a list that's like what Patricio did in the first act, where he's like, have I not braved the seven seas? Have I not
that's
fought in
great.
wars? And she's
I didn't realize that.
This is what men do. And it's just like, no, it isn't. Some men do that, but all men claim they do that to put you down. But you are so out of your gourd that you're like, well, obviously all men go to war and brave the seven seas and work tirelessly. And all they ask, and it's just like, no, 1 man in 100 do that. And all of them are just like, well, I'm a man, so it's just so.
I would love to see a stage production where when she launches into that, Patricio takes a small piece of paper out of his doublet and is basically checking her for lines, like stage managing her. Like reading along with her as she goes, kind of like, don't fuck it up.
Like, you know that ding noise when you get things right or wrong, like the spelling bee, like ding ding. Yep, seas. Fought Hercules.
So far, so good.
Built the pyramids. Yes.
And when she's done, he just gets up and goes, I have some notes. Like, I've got a few notes on the line readings.
And then she says, so and what would a woman be if she didn't like just be mild and welcoming to him? She would be, and she says, a foul contending rebel and a graceless traitor to her loving lord, which is exactly what these assholes are. They've sold out their parents. They've lied to their parents.
Good
thrown
point.
People in jail. They've treated everyone like shit. But she's saying, God, what would we be if we weren't mild? We'd be what everyone in the room except for Gremio is. But again, like bad behavior since she's completely mind bothed at this point, bad behavior for a woman would be intolerable. But bad behavior for a man is just like, well, let's get dinner.
And again, it's almost like, is Shakespeare crazy ahead of his time? Because you could easily play that as she's describing, a woman doing this, all the men in the room kind of looking at each other like, oh, we did way worse shit than that. Like we are total piles of garbage and we got away with it.
Right.
There's there could be a moment there in Kate's speech where you can highlight the behavior. I don't care if you from a modern perspective, you could put up fucking slideshows of everything that they've done so far. Patricio backhanding a priest, things like that. Like as she's speaking, totally. To highlight like what she's saying is like the dramatic irony at that point is so palpable. Yeah. For each person.
You could flash back to each one. If you did it on stage, you could just read it slowly and just show the reaction from an individual person who you knew like embodied that a half an hour ago.
We just saw that guy. It's like that guy's not good.
Sucked, and here he is at a banquet.
Yeah, that would actually be really interesting, especially like a banquet is, in terms of just stage, like a stage picture. I'm immediately thinking like you do it like the Last Supper. Like you set it up like the Last Supper, and you could easily have the projections of the poor behavior of the men behind them as they're kind of looking at each other. Like I could see that easily. Like again, like thinking about like, is this supposed to be like the ultimate ironic scene? Like are we giving him too much credit? Maybe.
Well, that's why I was so excited. I was excited that you can do it. Like I'm assuming that 80% of the productions have been sexist trash, but the fact that you could is wonderful.
You could easily set it up as like a commentary on the whole play up to that point.
Well, so you've not played Red Dead Redemption, right? Red Dead Redemption.
I have. Yeah, I have played it. I've played it to the point where occasionally I've been outlawed from a certain area, and then I don't know how to proceed.
So
I can't go in that town anymore.
You are somehow wanted with $1 million bounty. I don't know how you're going to get $1 million.
Don't know how that's possible.
So there's subplots in there about Native Americans, and one of the things that I think is wonderfully done is from the point of view of both Arthur and people, and a few characters within it. Like there's the story is basically of Native American elder and his son. The Native American elder is like, we just have to take these shitty treaties and keep moving. And his son is like, we need to go to war. And from the point of view of the game player who understands history, it's just like, oh, those are both doomed. Like, it doesn't matter. You can choose either one. They're both right.
Oh, cool.
They're both wrong in some ways. And that's kind of what I get out of like where we're leaving Kate, where it's just like, well, if we're leaving you in Elizabethan times, then like, it's just awful. But like, what are we going to do? You married a horrible man. You're done. There's no, you are locked in your own period of time. And that's like, you're making rational decisions because you can try door number 1 or door number 2. It doesn't matter because you have no power. We know that either way that you go, you're screwed from here. And that's like the kind of like fatality or fatalism that like, not Mortal Kombat fatality, which would be awesome. overall fatalism. That's
babality.
Toasty.
Friendship.
So, and one of the last things she said is like, she's like, women, like, just get together. Don't try. She says, veil your stomachs, which is saying like, don't act as if you don't need to eat because it's just like, ugh, you've been abused to the point where you don't understand abuse, and you now understand abuse as love. Like you are just a beaten puppy.
Yeah. In fact, one of the lines I wrote down was, place your hand beneath your husband's foot. It's such like, that is the fucking lowest, like place your hand beneath your husband's foot.
It's not,
like,
and it's not necessarily to give him a hand up. It's just,
no,
just put it there. Why? Because put it there.
Yeah. And that's the thing.
Is he trying to reach something? I don't know.
No. And that's the beauty of it, is that like, you can only see that as a, dominant and subservient relationship. Like there's no other way to interpret that, place your hand, you're not doing, it's not fucking Fosse.
He's not.
Yeah. This is not Alvin Ailey is not coming out and doing a number. Like this is, she's saying you have to be subservient in order for your relationship to be good. It's so dark. So dark.
It's what is more black? It is that.
It is onyx. It is obsidian.
So that ends, and just I feel like each of the lines that they say back to each other like reinforce everything. And so Petruchio again says, "Come kiss me, Kate." Ew, awful.
Gross.
Like
gross.
It is head in the box. So yeah, let's see the head in the box one more time. After that, Lucentio is saying like, okay, well, go do your stuff. And then Vincentio's last line is, it's good when children are toward. So it's good when children like listen to their parents, which these people don't. Like they've been terrible to you. They've been terrible to both your parents, but it's guys talking to guys in an atmosphere of wealth. So it's just like, well, isn't it great when kids are nice to their parents? They're not. Yeah. They treat you with utter contempt, but you clearly don't care. Boys get carrots, girls get sticks. And so
if you're going to go, with that, the idea that we talked about last time, where this kind of behavior is passed down, from man to man,
right? Like
the boys are listening.
Right. What's the message that Vincentio is sending there? Like, that you were naughty. That time you had to throw me in jail, but thank God she's mine.
Yeah, that. Yeah. Again, well, the mouth on this one. Again, like that idea of like, you almost put me in jail, but it's not as bad as Kate's mouth. It's the ultimate. That's the ultimate joke.
And so then, Petruchio says, "Come, Kate, will to bed." That's awful.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so yeah, he makes one more comparison of women to animals. He says, "'Twas I won the wager, you that hit the white," which means you that got you're the one that killed the deer. Being a winner, God give you good night. So then Petruchio leaves with Kate, shiver. And then the last thing is Lucentio saying, "'Tis a wonder, by your leave, she will be tamed so." And "'tis a wonder" seems like they're almost talking about like something biblical or godlike. And there's been so much where like she's been asked to treat him like he's God. Just the fact that they sit back and be like, "That is it's the most amazing thing I've ever seen." Like they are treating his just utter awfulness as if it was like the burning bush or something. Like "'Tis a wonder" isn't the most amazing thing, but to like it does seem like what you'd say after you saw an angel or something else. Like they've just seen the eighth wonder of the world, that this guy was such an animal overall.
Well, I'll be just looking at the grandeur of the Grand Canyon. I'll be God's majesty.
Here's something that I wrote down about Act 5. I said, "Gremio, the old guy, just recedes. I think he knows this scene is fucked. It's like he's watching Trump get elected."
It's just a slow sidestep out of the room.
Yeah, he's just like, and like everyone who's in that room is like the people who are just like, "I think it's going to be okay. I think he'll get a good cabinet." He's just like, "No, this whole family is fucked 6 ways from Sunday, and I'm not here for this."
I've got enough money to not be here, so I'm gonna go.
I think like when I step back and look back at the whole thing. So first of all, the ending feels like any horror movie where people are kind of like possessed at the end, Body Snatchers, Blair Witch, or something, where it's just like, oh god, they're all pod people now. And there's something even worse about Petruchio being the thing that unlocks this in everyone. If it's pod people, if it's a witch or something, then it's something horrific. But again, it's like the president being elected. You're just like, oh god, if we were going to elect someone horrible and evil and they were a genius, that'd be one thing. But for this guy to be the one that like does it, it's just like, we are so much lower than I thought we were. It is horrifying to look in the mirror if this is what it takes to marry royalty and utterly dominate her. Like all he did throughout the entire play is walk into the room and say, "Here's what my appetites are, and I'm going to play into your chauvinism." And he just stuck to those two things, and it was enough to win in every single situation. It's just,
and just the lackluster. The ending is so lackluster. You know, just the two remaining characters going like, "Wow, that was something."
Just everyone is smaller for it.
Yeah.
Like,
that's why I think Shakespeare dropped the ball by not bringing Sly back. Like that's when you bring Sly back, turn to the audience going, "What the fuck was that?"
That would be great. But that would be great for a play within a play where he was just like, so I've realized that I'm not a king, by the way, but I just want to be clear. Like, do you people think this is art? Because you people are out of your fucking mind. I would rather be poor in the gutter than be a rich man who thinks this is how people should think about things.
Yeah, and then he just tears off all the finery they put on him and they fucking throws it at the audience. Eat this, and then leaves. He does it every night for a full run.
The other
oh, you're saying?
thing it reminded me of was One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, because I felt like what I was left with is just like, there's no room in this world for Kate. Like the problem was that like the world could not put up with Jack Nicholson, and so his brain had to be cut out. And like that's what it was for Kate. It's just like, oh yeah, there's no place for Jack in 1950s USA, and there's no place for you in 17th century.
Yeah, I think
so
honestly,
like,
I think that's probably the best way. Like if you're doing a modern interpretation of this, that's a really good way to do it. As we talked about before, like a Kate as a person out of time, you know, and like framing her as somebody who is is being punished for her essential humanity. Like her only crime is being a woman who talks back, and meanwhile all the men in it are doing great. Again, I keep struggling with this idea. Is he because as you say, it's almost a Weekend at Bernie's, like ludicrous
the Anchorman thing keeps popping into my head, because if you just had like the cast of Anchorman do it, and instead of saying wow that escalated quickly, if they were just like wow he's a genius.
yeah
like I was so relieved to see that it's as evil as I wanted it to be.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very difficult. Well, that's not difficult, but I think that I can guarantee you, I can give this to a select group of people who would read it in a very different way, But I think that it's difficult from a modern perspective to look at this as, I think it's exploitable. I think there are moments where you can turn this into high. Again, it's the beauty of Shakespeare, where, they give you Shakespeare because it's your interpretation that is highlighted. The words have always been there, centuries. So like the idea that you can turn this play, as dire as it seems, you can turn this play into a modern, relevant social commentary with just a few visual tweaks, and just like directorial things. Like if Kate's final monologue is done in like this almost unrelenting drone,
if her
special lighting, harsh lighting,
so,
it becomes something else.
What if everything else Kate said during the play is addressing other people on stage, and at the end she's just like googly-eyed, turn towards the audience and be like, what else? And if she's likable and intelligent from the beginning, at the end she's just like dead-eyed and be like, what? Put our hands beneath their feet. That's where we should be. Like I feel like that works with modern sensibilities, but also you could find a way to have people with horrible views elbowing each other for the first two acts and then have no idea what they're in for. Like be brought along and be like, oh God, like you recognize yourself in acts 1 and 2, and you start to feel queasy in acts 3 and 4, and act 5 you just want to call your mom and apologize. Like,
yeah, you could I'm sure a very deft actress could turn that final monologue into a roast of all the men on the stage.
Yeah.
With like as much subtext as is needed to make it very clear that maybe Kate is still in there.
With the exception of Petruchio, that picture of Trump and Romney getting dinner where it looks like Trump is eating his soul?
Yeah, yes, I do.
Like he could just be like, as every other guy on stage feels queasy, he could just have that shitty grin on his face, just be like, this is great. These guys all had morals before I got here. They were all deferential to their parents. They were seeking the platonic ideal of love. This guy came here looking for an education.
Can you imagine?
Look what I've done. I came in here, I told them I was looking to marry because my dad just died and I wanted some money, and none of them care. As long as I played to their base appetites, it all worked out, and it always will work out. So Kate, let's go to bed.
I think that would be a much better, like, considering Lucentio, that would be a better line, just being like, college. Am I right? And that's the end of the play. But you know what, though? Those last two lines, it actually, very, very often I think about Shakespeare in context with other playwrights of his time. And I remember they're just like, Shakespeare is just a touch more eloquent than the people who wrote at the same time.
Yeah.
Like I'm thinking of like he has Merchant of Venice, which is just a better way of than saying Jew of Malta, which was another play at the same time. Like he's less blunt, but I think that this play, well, there's a play that was written around the same time called "'Tis Pity She's a Whore." Like those kind of things. Like it's just like people couldn't help but hit people over the head with what they were writing. I think this is like Shakespeare's kind of learning not to do that. Like his first time of going like, oh, maybe I'm giving away too much in the writing. Like maybe I'm being a little too blunt, with all this. Because Taming of the Shrew is like very similar, saying Jew of Malta or,
no,
"'Tis pity she's a whore." Which the most awesome part of that play, by the way, is the final line is "'Tis pity she's a whore." It's
which I think is
chef's
line
kiss
from Bachelor Party.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like I remember when I saw that in college, there was somebody did a production of it, and I remember thinking it can't possibly be the final line of the play, and it was. I was like, I can't believe that.
Well,
I can't believe what I just saw.
If you had during her final soliloquy, it dawn on each man in that room what a piece of shit he is, and you see it dawn on each of them, and they like retuck their shirts in, and they're like hand to their chest or looking, or they can't make eye contact, and then like that's lit a certain way. But then that lighting breaks, and then they bro out for those last 6 lines. So they're like, "Good night, dude. Take her to bed." And so it's just like, yes, these men will have that realization, but it will have no fundamental effect on the society they're a part of. Like they will be shamed for those 3 minutes, and then they'll be like, "Whew, that guy's crazy. You gotta have Petruchio back, man. That was a crazy
I suffered
weekend."
Absolutely no repercussions from that.
Or also just like when she makes them feel something, they're just like, "Oh, glad she's gone."
That was getting pretty dark. If I don't mind saying.
It's not what I need at the end of a banquet. Let me just say, it's some broad getting up, talking to me.
Get somebody like grab a guitar or something. Like, why are we listening to her? Yeah, something like Billy Joel, something like that. Yeah, I'm moving out. See, that's what I'm talking about.
You know what's happening in this song? He's moving out.
He's moving out. He's his own man. Which we have every right to do as white males, right? Everybody's like, fist bump.
He has the means to move out, so he does. It's great. He's got this,
It's great.
He's got this great philosophy that he shouldn't have to have a job. So good for you, Billy Joel archetype.
He sticks it to the man. He, of course, is the man. We're not going to talk about that.
He gets to move wherever he wants. He has freedom of movement as a white guy in Long Island. So, it's a parable.
I would love to do a production of this where it ends with a Billy Joel song. I think that'd be hilarious.
I would love to cast Billy Joel as any of the people.
Billy Joel is Petruchio in Taming of the Shrew.
All right. I'm really glad this one almost seemed like I hope every other play is this good, because it almost felt like a twist at the end to see if he could pull it off or not. So I feel like this was an awesome one to start with.
Oh yeah.
All right.
I don't think he does. I do have.
But the thing is, all I want out of it was a world where a woman director could. So
yeah, I would love to see. I'm sure there've been women directors doing this play, and I'm sure that they've probably done every idea that we've come up with, to make this palatable. Yeah,
I think White Guy 1 and White Guy 2 came up with some really new territory about what it's like to be a woman.
They're venturing. I mean, it's like they've got their finger on the pulse. It's like they're not white.
These guys get women.
Straight white men coming up with
straight white men talking about Shakespeare.
Look at this progressive. The only other gripe I had in this whole play was in Act 5. Shakespeare repeats a joke, that he has used in at least one other play, which is Much Ado About Nothing. But the one joke is you're something like this is your son, and it's either Vincencio or Baptista who says, well, so his mother says, or so his mother tells me. And I fucking like I said the line in Much Ado. I played Leonardo at one point in my life, and it's like I read it and I was like, seriously, you're fucking recycling jokes, Shakespeare? He makes up language. He makes up new words in English, but he recycles this dumb joke. Like, this is your daughter? Well, so his mother says.
I like to.
She gets around.
It kind of echoed at some point. Petruchio makes a similar reference, but I think he's gaslighting Kate at the time. He's in some way asserting his identity, and he's like, "Well, I'm my mother's son," and it's just like, yeah, that doesn't change anything. Weird. I thought you just asserted like a bit of circular logic there, and so by having Lucentio, who again could have come in and been like a mature figure, say something as dumb as Petruchio, it just felt like, oh, his brain disease. Under the table. That's great. So I liked it for that reason, but no, it's not a good joke on its own. It's
I was surprised to see a reused joke in a Shakespeare play.
Well, he reuses the fucking horn joke every play. So,
oh yeah, this one he does it like 4 or 5 times.
Oh,
we get it.
Well, maybe you have a horn.
We get it. This is when Shakespeare was still like a Tom Arnold type, like hacky comedian. We have yet to get to the true like John Mulaney heights. We're not there yet.
He's in the valley of the Tom.
Yeah, so far.
Well, I for one don't know what to think of that ending. This is why I didn't marry. If Wally Raleigh pulled that sort of Petruchio thing with me, I'd have him defleshed. I can do that because I'm queen. Fat and Greasy Citizens is presented by Chuck and Gabe. Theme song by Darren Curtis. Next week, Comedy of Errors. Maybe.